was going to be a chemical engineer. And I remember the guys, like, they just like blow my phone up all day. And I got tired of it. So like I would just silence my phone. I literally, like, I was probably 23.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we also learn in the cockpit is to...
If the problem happens at 10 a.m. and they ring you, but then they come back to the shop at 4 p.m. and it was magically solved, then it wasn't.
Time is ultimately nonlinear, right? So if we are truly in the present moment, we can actually expand time. If you like, meditation is a huge part of my life.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Coach Carroll. Welcome to another episode of the Sales Factory. Today, the lineup: Mike Brown's in the building, founder of Unbreakable Wealth. This dude is a Navy veteran, investor, and serial entrepreneur. Mike flew F-18s as a naval flight officer for nearly a decade before founding, scaling, and exiting an 8-figure energy investment firm, generating north of $100 million for his partners and investors. Today, he coaches founders and everyday people alike on building real wealth, breaking through mental barriers, and making a legacy. Mike's got the receipts, the battle scars, and a no hype approach for achieving serious, sustainable financial success. Mike Brown, welcome to the Sales Factory, my man.
Thanks, DJ. Appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Well, my aviation brain is like let's hop into the fighter jets, but we'll roll this back a little bit. I know we'll get to it. Tell me a little bit, man, about how you went from military to being an entrepreneur, because my wife actually did 6 years in the Air Force. So first and foremost, I appreciate your service. Thank you for what you did, and it allows entrepreneurs to do what we do here in the States, right? And so thank you for that. And let's dive into it there, man. Walk me through that transition from military to entrepreneur.
Yeah, I appreciate it. When I was young, there was two things I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the Navy, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So it was, for me, always the inevitable path. I knew that, I wanted to be in the military and serve when I was young, but I always felt the pull toward entrepreneurship, and I knew I would found a company someday. And so after I served, I got out in 2011 and started my path into entrepreneurship. And, the Navy is an incredible experience. I think it's, I have a complicated relationship with my military service.
I think everybody does that was in.
Right. I gained so much. I learned a tremendous amount about who I was, about what it takes to achieve high performance. But there are a few downsides in the Navy. It's one of the world's largest bureaucracies, right? So if you're a high performer and you're excelling, the reward you get is not more money or a promotion. It's just more work. So I knew that was not the life for me long term. I wanted to be responsible for my own success, and what better way to do that than entrepreneurship? So I loved my time in the Navy, and as I say often, you couldn't pay me any amount of money to trade my time in the service, and you couldn't pay me any amount of money to still be in.
Yeah, I agree. It was funny when my wife was getting out, she said that her phrase she always told me was the Air Force was hurry up and wait. It was everybody was in a hurry to get stuff done, but as you alluded to, the bureaucracy and, the Air Force and the Navy are side by side. And so it was always just these things. And it was funny because she got out and she said, civilians only see the TV commercials and the billboards. And so it's like the world's greatest, military, and it is by might and strength and power, but holy shit, if you're in it, man, the stories that she shared with me, I'll share what was pretty funny. They were on a training mission, and one of the commanders, his air conditioner in his tent went out. And so he literally just goes to the under people, the airmen, pulls the tube out of their tent, shoves it into his tent, steals their air conditioning in the middle of the night. It's just little stories, man, that I would hear about. And, it came to the point for her to re-enlist. And at that point, I was doing pretty well. We've been together for 12 years. So, we had been together for half the time that we've been together now. And they were like, how about a $5,000 bonus? She was like, absolutely not. They're like, a $10,000 bonus. She's like, no way. And the guy said, what's the dollar amount that it would take? She said, the military doesn't have the budget for that number, because she was like, after 6 years, man, she was ready to go. So I think that's a common theme. People love that they were in there and serve. I got lots of friends that did it. And then there are certainly lifers, but there's other people that are like, man, when I was out, I was ready to get out. And sounds like you were kind of in the same boat. No pun intended.
No, definitely. It was like I said, I learned a lot, but it also takes its toll. And, being in combat, and I flew 75 missions in Iraq
Wow.
from 2007 to 2008. Being in combat, again, I think it's a sacred human experience. I mean, I think, putting your life against the line and against someone else they're ultimately just trying to get home to their family the same way you are. And it really puts things in perspective when you're, placed on that crash course. And, the military took a lot of my friends. And so I hold service and people who serve with deep reverence and respect. But, I hope that we can not be unaware of the cost.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I got to know, man, what's it like to fly an F-18?
I mean, it's one of the coolest things a human can do. I would say that banging off the front end of an aircraft carrier, going from 0 to 185 knots in about 0.8 seconds is an intense experience. And then landing on an aircraft carrier is one of the most terrifying things a human can do. So coming down the chute at night, landing on a postage stamp that just looks like a couple of lights, it never gets any easier. You just get better.
I love that. Yeah, my flight instructor, I think it was maybe my third flight, I soloed in 7 hours, and it was the fastest solo he'd ever done with anybody. And he said, I'm going to let you go solo, but real quick, just remember all landings are just controlled crashes. And I was like, holy shit, like you're going to tell me that right before I'm about to go solo my flight? That was interesting. So I don't think I'd ever been more white knuckled than that first landing coming back in. But man, I think it was Da Vinci that says, like, once you take flight, like your eyes will ever look upwards, because that's where you dream to be. Because it's, humans move on this plane and this plane, right? A forwards and backwards, left and right. It's like when you can add that element of elevation, man, it's just a different experience. And I can only imagine in a fighter jet. What do you think?
It's a special experience.
Yeah, man. What do you think maybe is a lesson from being in that high pressure, high stress situations that you were put in? How's that played through to entrepreneurship? Because obviously I'm not taking anything away from your service, because that is a night and day comparison. But in entrepreneurship, man, there's also a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. So like, what are some things that you learned flying those planes that has helped you in your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost lesson is that there are no emergencies in business. And, when one of the most harrowing times I had in the cockpit, going down the catapult, our cockpit completely filled with smoke. And it turns out we had an electrical fire in the cockpit. And so, as we're launching off the front end of the carrier, we're completely blinded. We don't know which way is up. And thankfully we were able to safely, get up in flight, empty the cockpit cabin pressure, and land, all within about 2 minutes. That kind of situation just doesn't exist in business. And there are times when people are losing their minds, and, this deal has to close on Friday and we didn't get the paperwork done. And I was really fortunate to have a perspective that differs from a lot of people, and realize that, hey, we're all sitting here at zero G, 0 miles an hour. We're going to be okay. And if this deal doesn't close on Friday, we'll just push it to Monday and figure it out. So, bringing that type of levity, I think, to business was huge. And then beyond the perspective, I think what the Navy, especially in tactical aviation, does better than anybody else is train awareness via muscle memory, and then a process that all fighter pilots love, actually developed by Colonel John Boyd from the Air Force, called the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, act. And so it is a mental framework for taking in information, making a decision, assessing that decision, and then making a new decision. And that really is what business comes down to, right? I love Mike Tyson's quote, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so how do we slow time down and go, okay, what is the situation in front of us? What are the factors that we can control? What is the best game plan I can put in motion to set myself up for success? Let me execute that game plan. And now I'm just going to start over and start assessing again. Okay, what's the new information? And so you continually learn to improve, improvise, and iterate in order to get yourself to the best possible outcome. And I think bringing that framework into the business world really allowed us to, make better decisions under pressure, which I think is really what it's all about.
I couldn't agree more, man. Earlier today, you're the 5th episode today. Chop all these up and compress the time, and big fan of the buy back your time mentality, but I'm also a big fan of the compress your time mentality. And so I batched these episodes, and I had a real estate agent on earlier, and he was talking about like making the decision of like answering the phone at dinner when you're with your family, right? Because it could be Bob, the real estate investor, that's got a big deal. And it's like, I think there's certainly a season where you may have to hustle like that, but I also think that there are trade-offs where I love that you said there's no emergencies in business, because simultaneously, if there's no emergencies in business, that means that everything can be on fire and you still operate the day, right? I see my personal brand gets in front of a lot of young entrepreneurs. When I say young entrepreneurs, that could be the Colonel Sanders, right? I'm from Kentucky. I got my shoes on so you couldn't tell, but it could be the Colonel Sanders starting KFC in his 60s, or it could be the 18-year-old kid like when I started my first business. I see them get so frazzled by like the smallest things. And if I look back over the past, golly, man, almost 20 years now, it's like been the compounding effect for me, me being able to handle multiple things, like an outsider going like, holy shit, man, like there's a lot of stuff going sideways in your life right now. And it's like, huh? Oh, that over. Oh, yeah, I guess. Right. It's like, you build up a tolerance, I guess, if you will. And that is, man, I love that you brought that up, because it's such an X factor that not a lot of people talk about. But if you're going to get to any level, I mean, especially that was my next question. Like, talk to me about like the mindset and the habits that you had to get in place to operate at a level where you guys are going to be, a 9-figure exit. Like, that's massive, dude.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we also learn in the cockpit is to build muscle memory, build SOPs, and follow the SOPs, because what you're trying to do ultimately is reduce cognitive load. So if I can train myself to do something the same way every single time, follow the checklist, right? Like I'm going to touch the switches in my cockpit in the exact same order to where it completely becomes muscle memory. And what happens is if we don't do that, right? If we start touching one switch out of order, we call this the normalization of deviance, meaning, okay, today I did one switch out of order, tomorrow I might do 2. All of a sudden in a couple of weeks, now I'm doing 7 switches out of order, and I'm putting myself in a really critical situation. So if I can follow the checklist, create that muscle memory, now I'm reducing that cognitive load to free myself up for things that are actually variable and demand my attention and presence and decision-making, because I've systematized and delegated every single other thing and freed up capacity to make better decisions. So I think that's one thing that we brought to the business world. And ultimately, I love what you were just talking about, which is all pressure ultimately is self-created.
Hold on a second. I got to repeat that one. All pressure is ultimately self-created. Unpack that one, because there's some gems in there.
Yeah. So when we think about it, time is ultimately nonlinear, right? So if we are truly in the present moment, we can actually expand time. If you like, meditation is a huge part of my life. And when you're meditating, the present moment can seem almost infinite because you're in true deep presence. Yep. When you're thinking about a looming deadline or some situation, it's actually taking you out of the present. You're putting yourself in the future. And then all of a sudden time starts to contract, right? You start to feel this pressure because you're no longer in the present moment. You're actually living in the future. And so truly, it doesn't mean the deadline's going to change. It's this external factor, but it's how do we relate to that deadline? I can either stay in the present, do the things I know that I need to do in order to make the outcome inevitable, or I can take myself out of presence, worry about, loop on things, and I'm actually not going to perform at as high of a level. The deadline hasn't changed, but the way that we relate to it has changed. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. I literally was just telling my team this because they're, one of the guys that is in a higher level, he's like, man, I can't get my stuff done because I'm reacting to the team all day long. And I'm like, let them sizzle, right? Not burn, not burst into flames. Just let them sizzle. Like that thing that they need your response on, right? Like, you were in the middle, head down doing something. So you couldn't get Amanda her 2-factor authentication coach. You needed to get into her thing. Like, that's not the only thing Amanda has to work on. And so like now you made her lack of planning, because like ideally that should have already been talked about in the morning huddle. Like, hey, at 2 p.m., I'm going to be sending this 2-factor so we can plan for it. Now it just became reactionary that Amanda's going to do it now. And now her inconvenience becomes your problem, right? My mom used to tell me this, Matt. My mom used to tell me this all the fucking time, and it would aggravate the shit out of me when I was younger, but I totally get it now. She said, a lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine. She used to tell me that all the time, and I would get so mad, so aggravated, but it's so true, and I think that speaks to what you're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. Like how can I be in the present moment and exactly like handle one problem at a time? And I think sequencing becomes really important, right? Because entrepreneurship ultimately is a never-ending string of problems, right? You get on the treadmill and you've got problems coming at you all day long, and we can't solve every problem. So now we have to get really good at deciding which problem in which order do I tackle. And working on 5 problems at once is not going to yield the same result as sequencing those problems properly and saying, okay, I'm going to solve this one first. Now I'm going to tackle the next one. And if you start to do that, some of those other 9 or 10 other things that are popping up almost start to become irrelevant, and in some cases are actually irrelevant. Yeah,
absolutely. I used to have my first business. I turned out 8 football scholarships my senior year of high school, started mowing grass, and I was going to be a chemical engineer. And I remember the guys, like, they used to just like blow my phone up all day, and I got tired of it. So like I would just silence my phone. I literally, like, I was probably 23 and like was unheard of. This would have been 2010, right? Like nobody, we were still buying ringtones back then, right? It was like, but I just put no notifications. I turned all my notifications off. I had a great sales coach that said, hey, control the controllables, like turn your notifications off. And he told me, he said, hey, if the problem happens at 10 a.m. and they ring you, but then they come back to the shop at 4 p.m. and it was magically solved, then it wasn't your problem to solve in the first place. They just threw their hands up and said, I'll call DJ and he'll figure it out, right? And so like by doing that, I think that's where that sizzle thing, you got to let those problems solve, is like it's probably not as big of an emergency as possible. Now, cockpit filling with smoke probably would feel like a pretty big deal, right? Yeah, my flight instructor, Chris, he was in, I want to say he was in the Air Force. It was either Navy or Air Force. He didn't fly. He didn't do combat flight, but he was in the branch. And he was just like notorious, dude, where I would think we were going to go up and do stalls or something like that. And we'd be cruising right along, and he'd just reach over and just push the throttle all the way in, back to idle speed, and be like, engine out, what are you going to do? It's like, shit, where's the checklist? It's like you have to follow those processes. I really hadn't got to think about it. I haven't flown in a couple of years. I'm not current right now, but man, there's so much in aviation that like you can take over to the business side of the world with checklist and that mental memory, that muscle memory that you mentioned. So powerful. Well, talk to me about, I'm curious your take on like prioritization, because I get a lot of messages that, maybe they're an entrepreneur, maybe there's somebody in a sales role in a business where they're like, I have a hard time prioritizing. And there's some school of thoughts that are like, it's not the entrepreneur's job to prioritize for the people. There's other schools of thoughts that are like, hey, if your vision was more clear, the priorities would be more clear to your team. I'm curious where you sit on that.
Yeah, so back to what I was just saying, right? There's a never-ending stream of problems to solve coming at us. So when I think about prioritization, I do an exercise with clients a lot. And I say, okay, take your revenue currently and write down 2 times that number. And if you had to double your revenue in a year, what would you focus on? And typically they'll write down like 25 things. So, okay, great.
One for every 2 weeks.
10x your revenue in the next year. What would you focus on? What would be the key factor in being able to do that? And magically, there's only like 1 or 2 or 3 things that would actually be critical in getting to 10x, right? And so what I want to do is, okay, looking at what's truly important. What are the 1, 2, 3 things that I need to focus on that would make this outcome inevitable, right? And this is how we shift from being from outcome focused to process focused, right? I want to simply wake up, do the 2 or 3 things that they're going to move the ball forward in a meaningful way. Usually those are tied to revenue, right? Especially as a founder, we have a million hats that we have to wear. We have a million competing priorities. And if I can focus on 1 or 2 revenue generating activities every single day, then I let compound interest take over. And if I'm making sure to build those habits that make my outcomes inevitable, now I get to live in the process. I get to live in the present, and the outcomes take care of themselves.
Yeah, I love that, dude. Yeah, why, like 25 things to work on, like 1 every other week. Like, let's do that, right? It's like, yeah, right. That's good luck with that. I want to shift a little bit to the wealth side of things. It's like the entrepreneurship. I'm like, half my audience is like, if you're not in business yet, you're like, fuck this, man. This guy's like these guys are like, there's problems every day. But it's like, it is that, man. It is one of the hardest things in the world to do. But man, if you're built for it, it is the most rewarding thing. And as we're building this AI SaaS platform, like my new book coming out called The Hunter Head Game, I wrote that because like there's so many lessons that I learned in my blue collar business, and it's in so much of entrepreneurship is very much a head game. Like it ain't really what you think it is. It's like these stories we just start fostering up inside of our brain, is 6 inches between our heads. And I also just think that we've gotten really fucking soft as a country. Like, it's like we're seeing the net effect of like 8th place participation trophies and like Uber Eats at your fingertips. Like, lions don't come into our village and carry kids away anymore. And so like, there's like been a whole mindset shift that, that's why I wrote that book. But I want you to talk about building this unbreakable wealth, right? Like what are some myths or realities for founders around building wealth? Because income and wealth are not the same thing.
Yeah, you nailed it, brother. So we've been talking about building my business, but my story really starts after I sold my business. So
okay,
I sold my business in 2019 for a life-changing amount of money. I never should have had to work again. But 2 years later, I woke up more stressed out, more overwhelmed. There was days I was so just overwhelmed that I didn't even want to get out of bed to face the day. So what had happened is I bought a distressed e-commerce company. I was losing $100,000 a month. I was watching my bank account quickly dwindle towards zero. And I was a multimillionaire on paper, but I had been investing in deal after deal after deal for the last 5 years, and all of my assets were illiquid. So
for people that don't know what Matt. So for people that don't know what illiquid means, basically Matt got a big lump sum when he sold his company. So he had, round numbers. I don't know what the number is. It's not important. It's $10 million. And so now Matt found 10 different opportunities to put $1 million of his cash into each one. And now Matt's back to zero in the bank account. Looks really good on paper because now it's like, well, now you're multiplied on the upside, but like the electric bills still due, and you can't pay them with like equity notes, right? So now I want to make sure we don't lose any of the younger entrepreneurs on that. So now you're waking up, you're looking at your bank account, and you're going, "Fuck!" Right? Like, what are we gonna do here? So what'd you do, man?
Yeah. So the fundamental myth that you're asking about is I thought I needed $100 million to be wealthy, and the reality is most of us need far less than we think, and beyond that, money is just a tool, right? Money in of itself is not actually useful. Money is only useful in so much that we use our money to create freedom. So money is a battery that powers the thing that actually makes us truly wealthy. And I define wealth now as freedom across 5 areas, and they're hierarchical, so they stack on each other. The fundamental freedom is freedom of health. Right? If we don't have our health, we essentially have nothing, right? They say a rich man wishes for many things, but a sick man wishes for only one.
Yeah. No point in being rich and ill.
2 is freedom in relationships. Number 3, freedom of time. And that's the thing that I sabotaged in this buying the e-commerce company, right? I had ultimate time freedom, but I gave up my time because I thought I needed more money.
That was going to be my question. Was like, did you looked at the number, and I was curious, was it a like entrepreneur, I can't sit still, I'm young enough, because I mean, you still look young as fuck, dude. You look like you're in great shape. It's like, was it I still want to go get more and play the game, I can't sit still, or like what caused you to like get off of that nest egg and get back in the game?
Yeah, I mean, truly, it was a case of what got you here won't get you where you want to go. I had built my career, I had built my wealth on going all in, putting my back against the wall, writing big checks, and then pulling a rabbit out of the hat and making it happen. And that was the very thing that made me successful. But along the way, we moved from being an accumulator of wealth, where we bet on ourselves and we go all in, to becoming a defender of wealth. And I failed to make that transition. So I was continuing the tactic of redeploying everything, making big bets, when the reality is I needed to be protecting my time. I could have been riding mountain bikes with my son. Instead, I'm trying to save this failing company because I thought I still needed more money.
Damn.
And then once we've solved freedom of time, now we move into freedom of mind and freedom of soul. And those are the highest levels on this pyramid, this hierarchy of needs. But when we talk about freedom of mind, that's the ability to have our beliefs challenged, hold two beliefs at the same time without collapsing, and really start to cultivate that freedom, which then allows freedom of soul. And freedom of soul is the highest level here. And that is where my inner experience matches my outer experience, where nothing's out of place. I'm waking up every day, living in purpose. My actions are aligned to my values. And now I'm unbreakable, right? When I wake up every day and I know that I am spending my precious time doing something that serves others, because there's no true wealth without service, right?
I agree with that.
We become truly wealthy the day that we realize it's not ultimately about us. And when we can find that purpose, now it doesn't matter. When there's one constant in life, and that's change, right?
Right.
If you're going through life and everything's going well, you can bet that at some point it's not going to be that good. And conversely, when everything feels like it's falling apart, you know that someday there's brighter days ahead, right? So how do I smooth those peaks and valleys out? And that is by matching my actions to my values. Let me determine what is the life I want to live, what do I value, and now how do I wake up every day and do that? And now, even if I'm going through tough times, I'm still in this space where my inner experience is matched with my outer experience, and that is true freedom.
I'm just taking that. Coach Carroll here is taking that one in for a second, because that's good, man. When I have these podcast days, when I get to be Coach Carroll, like there's like nothing else in the world matters to me on these days, because I know that I'm helping 18-year-old DJ Carroll that had the guidance counselor and the chemistry teacher and the mom and the dad that was like, we love you, and like it to their own detriment, right? My dad was like, laziness is not tolerated. Like, fucking get off your ass and go do something. My mom was like, hey, if you believe in yourself, you can achieve it, right? That kind of backfired on him, because I'm like, I'm not being lazy and I'm making $4,000 a month as a high school senior mowing grass. Like, let's go do this thing. I oftentimes think, Matt, like, I think my Coach Carroll persona, writing the book, doing the content, doing these podcasts, making the videos, it is in hopes that 18-year-old DJ that's not getting any support stumbles onto my thing and he goes, dude, this is the guy I need to be listening to. This dude right here is telling me when all bets are against you, when everyone's telling you that you can't do it, you got to believe in yourself when no one else will. And my mantra, hustle, it's worth it, because if you do wake up and you put in the time, like you said, man, smooth seas don't make great sailors, right? And so it's like, yes, if you will hustle and you'll eat shit for long enough, and this is the only thing in life that you can do for life is entrepreneurship, right? Like, you're gonna be fired up now, but it's like, if you don't give up, if you don't quit, you can't lose. They can't beat you, Matt. Like, it's like, all right, I'm just going to come back again tomorrow. Like, and eventually I'll have a day that does go my way and I'll build momentum from that. So say those top two, run through that pyramid again, because I want my edit team to make sure we take note of this and put it in the show notes, because I've never heard it said like that. It's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit, but like a take on that. So I really love this, dude.
It's similar to the hierarchy of needs. And so my take is this, is that true wealth is multidimensional. And money is only a battery to power are creation of true wealth. And true wealth for me comes in fundamentally freedom of health, freedom of relationships, meaning I'm not beholden to anybody, right? I can spend time with the people I love, and we're not necessarily in an area where they're controlling me or I'm controlling them with finances. Freedom of time, meaning I get to wake up and do the things that I love that light me up. Freedom of mind, and then freedom of soul, right? And that soul level is where our purpose aligns with our daily actions. And that's really it. If I'm not using my money in service of those things, it's not actually it's worthless, truly worthless. Right? Money sitting in a bank account doesn't actually make us rich. It might make us feel safe. Right? But now we have the work of, well, what does wealth actually mean? And you can only experience wealth in the present moment. Fundamental. Or we can't be rich in the future, and we can't be rich in the past. You can only be rich in the now. So how do I use my money to create a rich experience in the present?
Freaking love that, man. That is killer. Wow. All right. Well, I feel like I should have saved that for the end, because now I'm like, where do we go from here? Let's talk about investing. Oh, I love it, man. I love it. I want to talk about, so my team here, they put this together with angel investing, mentoring. So you were investing in deals. Oftentimes people may say like, hey, like I want to go get an investor. We went through, when we kind of transitioned from a marketing agency to a SaaS business, because I went through an accelerator here in town called the Endeavor Network. They're a global network, but we were selected out of one of 4 companies in the tri-state, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio area. And we're the only company from that fall of 2022 cohort that's still in business because we bootstrapped. One guy had told me he had raised like $3.5 million. The revenue was going to be $4 million this year, and they had 3 customers. I'm like, how the fuck do you sleep at night? Like, it's like crazy. Like, none of our customers are more than 1% of our overall book, right? So it's like customer concentration. But what I learned out of that was like, a lot of people go get funding for a business that they probably shouldn't have. There's a lot of people that get funding for a business with no roadmap of what they're going to do with the money. And so talk to me, like, what's your strategy when obviously you've had an exit, so you've been on that sell side of it, but it sounds like you also kind of went on the buy side of it. So like, what's a win for you? Like, talk to the guys that are maybe in their brains right now going, I got to go raise $1 million. Or, maybe for me, at least, Matt, I was like, I'm looking around the room going, damn, is bootstrapping the right thing to do, right? Because like it's a whole different world. You go into that like raise capital, raise it to build it to sell it world is like a completely different world than like Jim the plumber that just provides a service for cash flow. Like, let's talk about that for a minute, because I think you're going to have a cool take on that.
Yeah. So to that point, I invested probably $2.5 million in 25 plus deals over about 5 years.
Wow.
And, number one of my lessons learned was that the only people who should be doing angel investments are professionals using other people's money, right? So when a professional venture capitalist looks at his portfolio, what they're actually doing is they are betting on a few of those companies to actually return the entire portfolio. So the stats say, as an investor, as a venture capitalist, you need to make 67 investments. Only 10 of those might return any money, and 2 of them are going to return the entire portfolio. That means that 60 are going to fail, right? So unless you're prepared to write 67 checks, best left up to the professionals. That's something I learned the hard way. But you're totally right when it comes to raising money, is that it seems like the easiest way to get a business off the ground. But with zero interest rate policy for over a decade, venture capital became kind of the darling of alternative investments, but it actually created a lot of negative incentive loops. Venture capital is really useful for a business that can scale 100x, and it has a true 0 to 1 potential. And when I say 0 to 1, there's an amazing book by Peter Thiel about a business in a winner-takes-all environment. And in that case, they need to burn cash and scale as fast as they humanly can because they're fighting for market share. And the person who wins the market share is going to win the game, right? That
first mover advantage
makes sense to raise money for.
Yeah.
Most businesses do not have that kind of opportunity. And by the way, that's okay. right? That is a very specific type of business. Most businesses would be better off bootstrapping, because if you can't build a profitable bootstrapped business, it is highly unlikely that you're ever going to build a profitable business after you hit that scale, right? Uber's a great example. They've raised endless capital and are still trying to figure out a way to make it work, right? And so if you were reliant on investor dollars to make your business work, you don't have a business. You have a Ponzi scheme.
I like that. because listen, so I went to Indianapolis. This would have probably been like 2018, way before I knew anything about like this whole like investor world. Right? I'm a blue collar guy. Like I come from like, your house is dirty, Matt, I'll wash your house for $800. The house is now clean. Matt, give me $800, right? Like that was the business. And so we go to Indianapolis on this like tech and innovation trip with the local chamber, and we go up there, and there's a company called High Alpha. They're a big venture studio up in Indianapolis. And there's this guy, the company was called Xylo. I don't even know if they're still around or not, but that dude's like 45. He's dressed like he's 20, right? He's got a hoodie on and shit. I'm in a suit. Like I'm showing up like I'm wanting to do business. And the guy's like, we got 34 people. We got Nike and Under Armour as clients. And I'm just like, damn, And he's like, we should do like 2.5 to 3 million this year. And I'm like, I don't even have to take my shoes off and do Kentucky math on that one, right? So I raised my hand when we got the questions. I was like, "Are you guys profitable?" Right? And because in my world, in my ignorance, I said, I didn't know that companies could operate without making money. I thought that was the whole point of a business, right? And I'll never forget, the guy looks at me. He kind of looks at like everybody else was kind of huddled around. He's like, no, like I was stupid for even asking that question, right? Like, how dumb are you that you don't know that this is how this? And that was like my first foray, like vision into like, holy shit, man, there's a whole different game of business that gets played at that level, and rightfully so, because Peter Thiel's one of them, right? PayPal Mafia, like, yeah. OpenAI, we're seeing it again, right? Like these guys spend so much, it doesn't make sense right now. But if you can, you got to raise $100 million on the way to being worth $1 gazillion. It's like, fuck, it was worth it, right? It's not about what it costs, it's about what it gets you. And so I think I think you're so spot on, man. That you said, you've got to, like, if you can't bootstrap the business, if the business doesn't make profit in the beginning, like without investor capital, it's not really a business. And it is very, they're called unicorns for a reason, right? Unicorns are defined as like $1 billion market cap companies. They're not called horses, right? They're called unicorns, and it's for good reason. So I think that's super powerful, man. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, I mean, and look, it doesn't mean that there's never a reason to raise capital, right? But you just have to understand, what type of opportunity am I chasing? Is this a winner takes all land grab, get as much market share as possible? If so, go swing for the fences and raise money, because that's the kind of business model you've created. Where people get in trouble is they think regular businesses, and I think it's an insult to call them lifestyle businesses. Lifestyle business means a business that makes money. But most businesses are lifestyle businesses based on the business model. Right. And that means I need to acquire customers profitably. I need to serve those customers profitably. Right. And you shouldn't need, now you might take investment to pull that timeline forward. But really, if you can't operate on those fundamentals, you should probably not be raising money.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. Talk to me about how to break the grind to grind cycle for real freedom, because to me, I think it's so powerful that you're somebody that can share a story that says like, hey man, I had the exit. I got to the finish line. I got to the top of the mountain, but then I seen a whole other range of mountain peaks that I wanted to go after. That you didn't build that in grind mode, right? Where like, yes, there is a certain level to grind. And I'm very particular on these words, because like hustle and grind are like very core to like my ethos, because like, again, my dad was like, laziness is not tolerated, because I think you can grind smartly, right? Like I think if you look at Elon Musk, I think that dude grinds, like, you know what I mean? Like he is not playing golf every day and operating at that level, but he's not grinding as in like on the shop floor going, here, let me put those lug nuts on with you, right? So what's your philosophy around that, and something you could share with the audience?
Yeah, well, I'm sort of the anti-hustle guy,
All
right?
right. Fair
And
enough.
I'll explain what I mean, which is most of us got into business for a reason, and that reason typically goes back to freedom, right?
Mm,
I'm unemployable. I can't work for a boss. It's
right.
not in my DNA,
Yeah.
right? So why did I start my business? Is to create freedom, and we've already talked about what freedom looks like for me. So the first thing we need to do is define why did I start this business in the first place? What happens is most of us start a business for freedom, especially a first business. And then all of a sudden, 2 years in, 5 years in, whenever it is, we look up and we go, holy shit, I've got a tiger by the tail. I feel like the walls are closing in. I'm working 50, 60-hour weeks. I haven't seen my kids, right? Like we built a prison for ourselves in the name of freedom, right? And but when we look at it, these two things don't line up. I've actually created a worse life for myself. So now, how do I get out of it? Well, number one, I got to define what a good life actually looks like. I have exercise called the Unbreakable Year, where you do exactly that. You define your perfect day, you define your perfect week, define your perfect month, and define your perfect year, and go, okay, this is the life that I want to live. Then we go, okay, how much does that life cost? Right? Is it 10 grand a month? Is it 20 grand a month? Let's add up all these things I put in my perfect year. Let's figure out how much it costs. That's how much money I actually need. So now, how can I design my life and my business to get me that amount of money to enable me to live that perfect life? And that's the exact right size for business. We get caught up in scale for scale's sake, right? We have this culture of biggering and biggering, not necessarily bettering and bettering. Here's what I
Ooh, I like
found after
that.
working with 300 plus founders: the happiest, most fulfilled founders tend to have $1 million, very low drag businesses doing something that lights them up. Those are the happiest founders that I know. For the
And when you say low drag, what do you mean by that?
mean, they're not working very hard. They're not working 60 hours a week, right? They've delegated the things that don't light them up. And they're true. I mean, and that's the kind of business I have now, right? I built the $30 million business built for scale, right? Now I wake up every day. I get to create, I get to write, I get to speak, I get to coach amazing founders. And I'm not really working that hard, right? And this business provides enough money for me to live the exact life that I already want to live. Now, is some of that because I built wealth before this in my first business? Yeah, I do have that freedom based on, like, thank you, younger Mike, for doing the things that I can't possibly be bothered to do anymore. Right? But I'm really clear on what the life I want to live is, and I'm really clear on how much is enough. Right? I don't need $100 million to be wealthy. I have everything I could ever want in my
Yeah.
life currently. So now it becomes about, how do I spend my time? And again, how do I serve others and help others live the same dream life that I'm living? That's my ideal business.
I love that, man. Yeah. No, so there's a couple things on that. Like I say, like, my mantra is obviously hustle, it's worth it. But I also say that all entrepreneurs, maybe it was younger Matt, has to hustle for a season for a reason. Right. And so there is not a world in which exists where you can manifest yourself to a $100 million exit. It doesn't happen. Taking action is what moves the needle, right? And so I agree. I also believe that most people work a 10-hour day, but they don't. They work a 4.5-hour day, and they're inefficient as fuck, and so they're just dinking off the rest of the time, right? And so for me, that's why I say it's got to be hustle for a season for a reason. And I'm very much at that point, right? It's like, I've got my farm, I've got my family, I've got my wife. I'm like, I'm not making sure that, like, are we eating tonight or buying baby diapers, right? And as we're looking to scale this AI company, it's like, her name's Allie. I called one of my mentors who had an insurance business, and he sold it for $10 million. And I said, Craig, you're one of the only guys that I know that have had like an exit. And in my mind, I'm like, I want to build and sell this thing for $100 million. And I was like, I need to talk to somebody that's been there, and, like, do I really need $100 million bucks? And he said, no, DJ, you need 25 to 30. And I was like, what? And he said, 25 to 30, indexed very, very conservatively, gives you about $1 million to $1.5 million a year. And everything above that, dude, is like, what are you doing? It's just going to be more money you can give back or pass to your kids. Because at some point, man, like, you can only drive so many cars at once. Now, I know Dan Martell's a friend of yours and like mutual acquaintance. So like, I love his philosophy of like, share your shit. That I get it. But like, you see these guys that have
His first McLaren. So,
what's that?
I helped Dan buy his first McLaren.
Fantastic. Nice.
Ownership of Dan Martell's McLaren mindset. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, right? Like, let's define what actually matters to us. And I would argue for most people, you even need less than 25 or 30 million.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is like, what do you see as like the number on average?
How much is enough is the ultimate question when it comes
Right.
to money, right? There's 3 levels of financial freedom. The first level is 12 months of spending in the bank. It's something liquid that you can access in 24 hours, right? Because you already nailed this earlier on. The only way to lose the game of entrepreneurship is to get knocked out. And the only way to get knocked out is to run out of money, right? So the first thing I can do is have 12 months in an emergency fund. This gives me safety. This allows me to weather any storm. If I lose all my customers, whatever happens, I've got enough runway so I don't get knocked out of the game. So that's the first step. Do not pass go. Do not invest in real estate or anything. Like, build 12 months of liquidity. Number 2 is 5 to 7 years of liquidity. This is level 2 financial freedom. Now I'm at stability. Now I can really weather a loss and not have to start over, right? I can have a failed business. I can have something catastrophic happen and I'm still safe. And then ultimate financial freedom is what I call escape velocity. And this comes when our assets generate enough monthly income to pay for our ideal life without ever drawing down on the principal. This comes at 33 times our annual spend. So if I spend 30 grand a month, I need $12 million, and now I'm work optional, right? My assets will, invested properly in fixed income, will pay me that $30,000 a month without me ever lifting a finger. This doesn't mean I have to give up and retire.
Right.
But it does mean that I'm no longer worried about having to wake up and pay the bills and hustle to survive. Now I can start stepping into meaningful work that is truly designed to serve me and not the other way around.
I love that, man.
Fundamentally, like I said, I thought I needed $100 million. I needed 12. I needed 15, right? I mean, if you're spending $50K a month, you need $20 million invested conservatively to survive for the rest of your life. That's a perpetual money machine. That's without ever taking money out of those investments. So now you're handing that same perpetual money machine to your kids.
Yeah.
And that's like, don't get me wrong, that's still like $20 million is still a lot of money, but it's a hell of a lot less than most people think they need.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a software business, you're not talking about having to build that's not a gazillion dollar a year company, at a 5x multiple, you're talking $4 million, top line. Like that's not crazy to get to and achieve, especially when the money printer go brrr at the treasury. Like, there's more and more funds available every day. And so run that. I want to make sure I got this because I think that was beautiful, man. So 12 months of spending reserved cash set aside safety net. Then we're going to 5 to 7 years worth of that same 12 months, right? And that's set aside.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I love preserving liquidity. My own trauma, my own mistake was I had that 5 to 7 years, but it was deployed into all kinds of stuff I couldn't access. Yeah. Right. So liquidity is optionality. I want to give myself the most optionality. The more options I have, the longer I extend my runway before I get knocked out.
Yeah.
Right. So that really is the game. And the other fundamental piece of this is that there's a huge myth we hear all the time that the average millionaire has 7 streams of income.
I think this fucks up young kids under the age of 25 more than any other advice. I think it does them more harm than drugs or alcohol or anything, man. Because like if you're on the path and on the trajectory to find that information, right? Because it's like that's not written in Playboy. Like you're on your way and you find this like 7 streams of income. Well, fuck, I got to start a TikTok shop and write a book and buy a real estate. And it's like, dude, you made 20 grand in net profit last year. No, you don't need a rental house that's going to make you an extra $100 a month. Talk on this one, dude, because this doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, so we only need one path to create wealth, right? And for most of us, that's going to be our primary business. If we're talking to entrepreneurs, our primary business is our our wealth creation vehicle, right? All the money that we take out of that primary business should be used to hedge risk and preserve optionality in case something happens to that primary business. Every dollar that we can invest outside of that should be invested in growing that primary business as fast as possible. And everything else is a distraction. And distractions are the greatest destroyer of wealth, right? And show me a bored entrepreneur. Show me someone who is scaling their company with systems. They've delegated all the things they don't want to do. That person is on the verge of true wealth. But what do? We go out and we buy a rental property, right? We buy a second business. We buy a competitor. We fire our marketing team, right? We love to mess up the mix because it makes us feel alive. We love solving problems, right? This is self-sabotage at the highest level.
Matt, I always say entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And if there aren't any problems around, we'll fucking make them so that we got something to do. So I couldn't agree with you more on that, man.
Yeah. So find your money generating vehicle, whatever that is, and then go all in on that. And then all you do for that is take your money that you're making there and build your stockpile so that you never get knocked out of the game. Eventually you'll reach escape velocity. Now you're work optional. You can sell that business or you can continue to do the things that light you up.
Is the sell the business part of getting to that escape velocity sometimes?
Exactly. I mean, that's how most people will do it, right? They get to an enterprise value that, and that's how I counsel entrepreneurs on whether they should sell their business or not, right?
Yeah.
We define, okay, how much money do you need to be happy? Say it's 12 million bucks and a guy's sitting on a $20 million business and they're trying to decide whether they should sell or not. Dude, take the chips off the table, go create your perfect life. It doesn't mean you have to give up on the game of business if you choose to. Yeah. Right. But right now, all of your risk is in this one primary asset. Let's go ahead and sell that thing, liquidate and diversify. And now we can really start playing the game to win.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. You know, when I sold my lawn care businesses, I always say, like, I grew to $3 million in revenue, sold it, and people are like, oh, wow. And I'm like, no, it's a lawn care business. Like, the multiples are shit, right? There's no profit in them. But then I transitioned to power washing and window cleaning because the profit margins were massive in that business. And so what I started to do was I did exactly what you said, right? Once I got all the debt damn near paid down, it's like, okay, now I'll invest in real estate. But I didn't go buy a rental house. I invested with some Jewish guys out of Chicago. We raised a fund. I syndicated the deal. And now my investment is spread across 72 units here in the west end of Louisville that are Section 8 housing, which, by the way, Uncle Sam didn't miss a single payment during COVID, right? And so there's those moves and it's like, okay, cool, right? And like my business. And then I started peeling some off and that's where we started the marketing agency. And then now like that thing started growing faster than the main thing. So I'm like, all right, I didn't try to chase two rabbits. I'm like, let's pare this thing back. It's on that, like you said, I got two people that run it. We sub everything out. I spend 5 hours a month on it. It's done. Like I had one of our competitors text me this week. He's like, hey, you want to buy my business? $250K. And I'm like, yeah, your website outranks ours, but like the integration process, all of the onboarding, dealing with him because he's a knucklehead. Like, no, it's not worth it, right? Keep the main thing over here. And then that is, I think, so valuable. And if you're a young entrepreneur, you're listening to this, you're watching this on YouTube or one of the other platforms, please take heed to this advice and this warning because there's Russell Brunson. I'll give one more analogy and we'll move on. Russell Brunson said it's like having a 12-inch string. And if you have to spread that string across 12 things, 1 inch gets moved per year versus if you put it all into one thing, it moves a foot per year. And you only got to do that. Matt's not saying right now that you got to do this forever. Like, sure, you may be able to diversify. It allowed me to have a different channel. And there was a thing where it's like, hey, this media business doesn't have seasonality, geographical boundary, and it's got recurring revenue. Oh, those are way better options in a business, right? Like, but I had to do one thing for over and over and over to be able to build that velocity inside that business to kick off that free cash flow. And dude, I can't commend you enough for talking about this because it doesn't get talked about enough. Everybody reads that stat of like The average, I want to know, one, where the stat came from, and then how old was the guys that they polled? Because, like, they're all 78 years old, right? And it's like, yeah, I got 7 streams of income, you know, and a 22-year-old kid now here's a hot clip and thinks they got to do it.
And there's a couple books that it might have come from, but the reality is it's not actually attributed to anybody. We can't find where this myth came from, even though it's one of the most often repeated total myths about wealthy people.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I know we're about out of time, dude. This thing flew by. This has been so much fun. I'd definitely love to have you on again. Guys, let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to have Matt on another episode and any questions you'd like to ask him in future episodes. Got some quick fire ones as we go through here, Matt, as we wrap this thing up. I always like to ask, what is a book you've been reading? I believe readers are leaders. I've got over 150 audio books that I've read in my library. What is something that you've read recently that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, so I read about a book a week. Reading is fundamental for me. I'll give you 2. My number 1 most gifted book is called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. She's an American Buddhist monk, she lives in Canada. But this book is fundamentally life-altering because it teaches us how to be present.
What's the name of it again?
When Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
So Pema Chodron is amazing, huge influence. And the other one, this is a shameless plug. I'm coming out with a book later this year called Be Rich Now.
Oh, let's go.
Use wealth to be present and experience wealth in the present. So I'm sure we'll drop a link to my newsletter in the show notes. Stay up to date, but I'll take that opportunity to plug my own shit.
Let's go, man. Timid salespeople have skinny kids, so I love it. And you know, I always say, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. And so I think I don't call them plugs or shameless plugs. Like, you're just trying to help people, man. And so, like, you got to get that information out there. So cool. Talk to me about one of the toughest moments that you ever had in business.
Yeah, I mean, we already touched on it.
I was going to say, waking up and learning you're out of money.
Yeah, there I am. Losing $100,000 a month every single month. That means I am taking my own liquidity and putting it into this business to cover payroll. There was a day again when it became so overwhelming. I was so stressed out. I looked over at my wife and I was like, I don't think I can get out of bed today. Like, I cannot even face my inbox because I don't know what to do. And a really good wife would have looked at me and said, honey, you can do it, and I believe in you. My wife is a badass entrepreneur. She's built her own multi-7-figure marketing agency. Wow. She looked over at me and she said, stay in bed, honey. I'm going to run your company today. And so here's what I would offer is finding a true partner on the path is the best investment that you can possibly make. And I happen to marry a fellow founder. It's one of the best investments that I've ever made in my life. And it's truly a situation where 1 + 1 is greater than 2. We are better together. We are a force. And it's not because we just support each other. We do support each other in all things, but she holds up the mirror and she makes me want to be better. And she finds my blind spots, and we are committed to always growing together. So the person that you marry is the best investment that you will ever make in your entire life.
I love that, man. He who mounts the wild elephant goes where the elephant goes. So I think that is definitely one of the biggest decisions you make, who you marry, who you have kids with. And then lastly, a word of advice. If you could go back and talk to your younger self as you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is don't put off your life, right? We are told in society to go do a job we hate, to stack enough money to finally retire at 65 so that we can enjoy the things that we never had time for. And that is completely backwards. You'll never be younger than you are today, right? And look, yes, there are seasons of our life where, you know, we may need to hustle so that we can get the outcome that we want. But I would offer that you can be rich in the present moment anytime that you choose. Freedom is a choice.
Love that.
And so don't put off your life. Find the things that light you up. Find ways to serve others. Find who you want to spend time with and prioritize those things now, right? Because you can't get back missed dinners with your kids, right? You can't go back and watch missed dance recitals, right? So no matter what you're building, keep in sight of what is the life that you're actually trying to create, and don't sacrifice the now in service of some outcome that may never even happen.
I freaking love that, man. One thing I'll add to that is when you start early on in business, you kind of play for the quarter or the year or like 24, 36 months. I think one of the best things I did for myself, I didn't realize it, but when I started my Coach Carroll brand when I was 23 years old and started speaking, I knew nobody hires a 23-year-old business consultant, right? Like nobody hires me to go on a stage in front of 1,000 people. And so I just always knew, I was starting the game that wasn't going to pay off until I was in my mid to late 40s. And so it allowed me to not care when a video got 16 views, and then it was 160, and then it was 1,600. And it was like, I just never played it for that game. And man, that's to that point. My wife and I were in Vegas at a conference. We were walking around, and we had just got done at the nightclub. We had a big old time. And like we saw these like 70-year-old people like in walkers, like coming down like the main drag. And I'm like, I don't want to come to Vegas when we're like that. I want to come to Vegas when we're here and we can enjoy it now. And if that means take a little less profit, right? Or like maybe we don't, like we have to stretch our timelines. Like I think if you're listening to this, you're watching this right now, Matt just put you on some game right there that you can live your life along the path. It's not this like, oh, we got to just do it forever. And like, sure, you've got to make sacrifices. I'm not saying that. There are sacrifices that come. Sometimes it's the business. Sometimes it's the family. Like you've got to pick and choose. But you can have fun along the way. And Matt, yeah, man, exactly. If not, you're doing it wrong. Dude, you are a beacon of light, a wealth of knowledge, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the Sales Factory and sharing with my audience today. If people want to reach out to you and get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, check me out on Instagram, mbrown.co. I've also got a podcast called Money Stories. I go deep with founders on money, meaning, and what makes a truly rich life. And I love my podcast. And then, books coming out later this year. So subscribe to the newsletter at unbreakablewealth.com/newsletter, and we'll get you in the know.
Love it, man. Well, I'll get the team to link that up in the show notes over at coachcarroll.com/podcast. You guys can get that over there. And Matt, thanks so much for coming on the Sales Factory. Guys, if you haven't hit the like and the subscribe button, please go do so. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about this episode. And if you haven't left us a review on the Apple iTunes, Apple Podcast platform, and you're on an iOS device, please go do that. It helps us get the show in front of more people, and so we can help more entrepreneurs. And as always, I'm your host, Coach Carroll. It's been another episode of the Sales Factory. Here's to your success. Hustle, it's worth it.